Redevelopment Agency Board meeting. Our meetings are public and you're welcome to join us. August 13th, 2024 Redevelopment Agency Board meeting. Our meetings are public and you're welcome to join us in Zoom, in person, or by watching from the City Council's agenda page, Facebook, YouTube, or on SLC TV. Please join us in whichever manner you feel most comfortable. We begin our RDA board meeting with comments to the board. Written comments may also be submitted to the RDA offices by P.O. Box 145476. Salt Lake City, Utah 84114-5476, or emailing council.comments@slcgov.com, or by calling our 24-hour phone line at 801-535-7654. Thank you for joining us. Before we start, I'll remind everyone about the rules of decorum, which are in place to ensure our meetings move along well and to help everybody feel comfortable sharing their comments. A copy of the full rules are available at the door. Scott Corpany from staff will be moderating our Zoom meeting and will message you with any questions about your registration. If you need to speak with staff, select Scott from the list of participants, but keep in mind that staff is handling many tasks at the same time. Taylor Hill on our staff will call out the names, and we will now open our general comment period. Taylor, do we have any commenters today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is no one registered to speak.
Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak? I see only RDA staff members. Great. So with that, we have no public, so that was general comments. We have no specific public hearings, which takes us to section C of our agenda. Item C1 is approval of the minutes. I will look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the meeting minutes of May 7th, 2024, May 21st, 2024, June 4th, 2024, June 11th, 2024, and July 9th, 2024.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Dugan, a second from, Board Member Dugan, a second from Board Member Lopez Chavez. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, nay. Passes unanimously with Board Member Petro and Board Member Pui absent at time of voting. This brings us to section item number C2, which is an informational update on the Salt Lake Central Housing and Transit Reinvestment Zone, otherwise known as an HTRZ. At the table, we will have Allison Rowland from Council Policy staff giving us an introduction. And then this says Marcus, but it looks like Danny, Kate Wara, and Ashley Ogden are here from RDA staff. Go ahead, Allison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is, as you said, an informational briefing on the Salt Lake Central Housing and Transit Reinvestment Zone. The briefing is on an application for a proposed second HTRZ to follow the one you approved a few months ago, I guess. It would center on the UTA's Salt Lake Central Station, which is near 300 South and 600 West, just west of the Rio Grande Depot. The application will be submitted to the State HTRZ Committee, and so today the RDA staff is requesting your feedback. I just wanted to make one correction before letting them get started, and that is that on the attachment in the staff report, there's a staff note that was accidentally included. It says that the board hasn't yet approved the HTRZ tax increment reimbursement policy. In fact, it has, as you know, if you remember back to last December, so I apologize for that error, and I will turn it over to the RDA staff.
Thank you, Allison. Kate?
Yes, thank you very much for letting us come and present this to you today. We are excited to provide this and give you a little bit more information and get some feedback from you. Let's go to the next slide. So Utah State Code 63N was established in 2021 and has gone through some updates through the years, with the most recent occurring in the last legislative session. With that, the objectives have remained fairly constant. However, within the housing section, they did include one slight adjustment. They included a request that objective also include encouragement to promote and promotion of the development of owner-occupied housing. So with those objectives you see listed there, within that housing is the ownership opportunity also. The goal of the overall HTRZ is to address the housing crisis and to establish transit-oriented developments throughout the city, the state. And we happen to have the best transit network in Salt Lake City, so we are established quite well to get these going. Within those objectives, something that developers really like, which is an objective, is to overcome development impediments and market conditions that render development costs prohibitive without any incentives. So in order to overcome those, the state has established these requirements. These have been the same over time, with one caveat being the affordable housing. Those percentages have changed. It used to be that they required 10% of the residential units that were built be affordable to those making 80% of the area median income or less. Now it's 9% at 80% of the area median income and 3% at 60% of the area median income, for a total of the residential units being at 12% affordable. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So you see those were the overall requirements. We'll go over to some specific requirements for this particular HTRZ in a second. What you see here are the eligible uses of funds. These are established by the state and address the different items that we can use. For this particular application, we are most interested in that infrastructure piece that can be used here, which falls under the horizontal construction costs, and as well as we're interested in the horizontal and vertical construction costs. Let's go to the next slide. So what you see here, this is the map that shows us where that HTRZ is going to be. The blue shows the parcels that are included. The star notes the location on the Salt Lake Central station that we are using as the center point. As a commuter rail station in an opportunity zone, we are allowed to go up to a half mile from the spot for the circle, that green circle that you see there, and collect increment and include up to 125 acres. So of those acres, 15 acres do belong to the RDA currently, and those are mainly adjacent to 300 South and up towards the north along 100 South as well. The major goal and focus for the RDA is to help promote the Rio Grande district that you have seen design and visioning for previously. With this HTRZ, we will be collecting, we are proposing to collect 80% of the tax increment from the taxing entities listed on the right of that slide. With that 80% being collected per parcel for 25 years, we will be including 2 different phases. So not all the parcels will collect at the exact same time. Some will start a couple years after the first section starts. Within that tax increment that we collect from the property taxes, 2% is allowed to go to administration of this HTRZ. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So with that tax increment, we have several goals to help make the Rio Grande district and the surrounding neighborhood come to life. As you can see from this visualization, it's the image shows the vision and the dream and the hope for the area. It's going to be bright, vibrant, sustainable. You can see solar here. It looks like someplace that we want to be and enjoy night and day. So to make that happen, we are envisioning significant public-private partnerships occur that help build the affordable housing, that ownership that they have asked for, the utility upgrades, and so many other items. Last month you heard you considered the USA climbing lease. That's just one component of the many items going on here. We're also looking at other large-scale capital investment opportunities here to be one of the many sources of funding that will go into it, including the Green Loop and the Tech Link Tracks extension. Once again, one of the many sources, not the only source for that. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. We have a few next steps that need to occur for this to happen. We are planning on submitting the HTRZ application in the next couple weeks. Then Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity will review this application with a third-party consultant. After their review, the HTRZ committee will consider it and either approve it with conditions, or not approve it. Then from there, we will generate an interlocal agreement for you to consider and adopt between the RDA and the city, and then we'll move forward with implementation of this HTRZ. Currently in this location, we have the Depot District project area in existence. It will need to have expired before this project area is triggered, which potentially could happen as early as next year, is what we're planning on. But for this particular HTRZ and the funding that could be generated from it, there will be great challenges to create the comprehensive vision for the western downtown area that have been put together and designed. We'll likely see sporadic development, infrastructure that couldn't support this transit-oriented development, and an unwalkable and disconnected neighborhood continuing to exist. So that is why we are moving forward with this HTRZ, and we are open to any feedback or questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Board members, Board Member Lopez Chavez.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. This is wonderful work. I just got finished meeting with Green Bike, and I wanted to see, when we talk about transit-oriented design, are we looking at other types of modalities besides transit as far as active transportation needs?
Yeah, the Rio Grande District Plan is kind of the basis. That's definitely our priority in using using the HTRZ tool in this area and implementing it. And that plan does identify various potential locations for mobility hubs, like more green bike locations or like scooter docking locations or things like that. We've definitely taken a comprehensive look at all that.
And an addendum to that question would be, in looking at the map where the half-mile radius expands in the HTRZ zone, it looks like it's inclusive of parts of I-15. Obviously, this is a conversation we've had over and over, is our rail crossings. Is there any funding mechanism that could be used to help develop projects or in partnership to overcome those barriers for the west side?
So the HTRZ budget is kind of broken down into, at this time, like the best we can do is break it down into that the 80% of the tax increment generated from those collection parcels will go to the RDA, and 60% of that would be reserved for private development. So essentially 40% of the RDA's 80% share is kind of what we call the public side of the budget. So that would be available for, our priority is Rio Grande District public infrastructure, because that's a huge funding need for that project to happen. But in addition, it is available for other public initiatives.
Thanks. For my colleagues, there's a lot of constituents interested, obviously, in the Rio Grande Plan, and overcoming our east and west side divide, specifically through train transit access and those barriers that we see through I-15. So just something that I'd like to see prioritized. I know there's a lot of constituents that are very excited. I'm sure they've reached out to you, Danny, but if we can thread that needle a little bit better, I think that gives ample opportunity for something that's growing organically from our community.
Great. Thanks, Councilmember Lopez Chavez. Councilmember Dugan?
Thank you, Eric. I'm excited about this. This is a great deal here. The question is on the housing side. I know we have the requirement of 9% and 3% of the affordable. Where are we? But there's no requirement for home ownership. But is there a goal, internal goal on home ownership, or how we're going to promote the home ownership at the affordable level? Is that part of our discussions on how we address that issue?
I'll take it. We always have to have that awkward look of who's going to take the question. This one's me. Yes, what you see with that 3% and 9%, that's the requirement within the statute. As per the policy that was approved by the board, we go above and beyond even that in terms of the percentages. To answer your question for home ownership, there is nothing in this plan or specific of what we're proposing at this point directly targeted to housing, as much as that comes into play with our annual housing funds policy that you approve as a board. So as we gather those funds, just like any other project area, the funds that we have the ability to place, we will put those in alignment with the policies you set. As projects come to us, they will have to meet those minimum thresholds for the affordability, and then we will obviously prioritize homeownership in those negotiations as much as we can, given the project.
Thank you, appreciate that. And just one more question on the affordable housing. And I think I read in the staff report that the affordability also has to be across all bedroom sizes. It's not just all one bedroom. It has to be spread out at some level between the one bedroom and the three bedrooms. Is that correct?
So in our HTRZ tax increment reimbursement policy, we do reference that and require that it be spread out and not just on micro units and one bedrooms, correct?
I have I think this is more general, if you can remind me, but also specific to this, because the question is on timeline. How long does an HTRZ project area last? Like, how many years can we collect increments the same as the CRA? And is it any different because we're near a regional station instead of just a track station?
So they are different depending on the types of HTRZs. The 900 South station, you're allowed to phase it with each parcel collecting for 15 years. In our conditional approval, they modified that to allow us up to 17 years if the law changes. So currently we're at 15 years per parcel in our first HTRZ. And this HTRZ, because we are at a commuter rail station, the front runner, we will receive up 25 years per parcel.
Great. I ask that because I'm glad that we have this additional tool for this neighborhood, because we've had a project area for so long, but that area's had all sorts of things happening to it, and it's been hard for us to get that project area moving. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that, but also just wanted to know the timeline. And then of course I hope this goes as fast as possible, because we've been waiting for this area to redevelop for a long time. But thanks for your work on that. The board members, any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you. That was informational, so no action is needed. The next item is C3, which is another informational update. This is a 300 West and 800 South West Montrose Tier 1 pre-disposition property report. Tracy Tran and McKenna Holly will be here from RDA staff. And it does not look like we have a council staff introduction, so go ahead.
And just a quick reminder, we're here today because the RDA land disposition policy or real disposition policy requires us to check in with the board at certain instances, and this is right before we dispose of a property, so this is the update for that.
And we can go ahead and start on the next slide, and I'll just introduce the property. So like Darren Mano just said, or Councilmember Mano just said, it's approximately located at 300 West and 800 South in the form-based urban neighborhood district. It's in the West Temple Gateway project area, and it's approximately 2 acres. Like Tracy said, we're here for the Tier 1 property disposition briefing. And currently there is an existing warehouse building with tenants and short-term leases. And we can go to the next slide, please.
Great, thank you. And just a quick reminder, this property we did put out for RFP back in 2020, but we did have to pull it because there was a discovery of some title issues with the street. So we're working through that, and we're hoping to concurrently work through those title issues as we put out this RFP. So the RFP for this property, we're looking for a project that will be a residential mixed use, mixed income with high quality design. And our main focus for this will be some sort of resident wealth building component for low to moderate income residents. So this could mean something like a home ownership project, something that is focused on tenant wealth building. Next slide.
Tracy, could you, I know there's different ways that things become a Tier 1 property. Is this one because of size, or is there another reason?
Yes, it's because it's it's at least 2 acres.
Okay, got it, thanks.
Yep. In terms of our method of disposition, we're looking to put this out through a competitive RFP, and the property could be offered for sale or lease. That'll just be subject to the development restrictions of the RFP. In terms of our suggested timeline, we're looking to release this in the next couple months. We'll have proposals due at the early 2025 with developer selection following that, and we're hoping to break ground in 2026. Any questions?
Yep, board member Petro.
Thank you. With its proximity to the fleet block, have you done any looking at the RFPs or any of the work that we've done over there to see if we can continue some of that momentum onto the development that we solicit here?
Yeah, we can make sure to connect with what's being done there.
Yeah, it'd be nice to kind of exchange, extend that ethos and energy to the other side of the street.
Yeah, I think even extending to the 9 line, the neighbors there are really interesting. I think they've seen this neighborhood evolve, but I'm interested in seeing the rest of this. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I was sad when that discovery was found, and we had to pull this back a few years ago. Gosh, was what, 2 years ago maybe?
2020 we pulled.
4 years. Oh my
yeah.
gosh. But thank you for figuring that out. Thank you for bringing this back. It sounds like we were able to actually maybe change some things that will better match 2024 than 2020, and be able to get some better public benefits written into the RFP. I hope that it's still very successful, and I'm really excited to see these parcels redeveloped. So thank you for your work on that. Board
Just a
members?
quick question.
Oh,
Does
Lopez Chavez?
Montrose doesn't connect all the way? There's no mid-block connection to 200 West?
I think you can walk it but not drive, right?
Okay, that's what I thought. You can walk through?
I think there is a physical barrier on where the single-family homes are that's been created. So I think one of the intents from the last RFP is to make sure there is a connection, just not vehicular, but at least some sort of pedestrian connection.
Checking if we have the ability to before the RFP with that Central Ninth Community Council. If I remember correctly, in 2020, I think they actually advocated to keep the barrier there, if I remember correctly. But in short, you know, that doesn't mean we want to create neighborhoods that are connected, and I'm, you know, a fan of promoting this mid-blockway access into the neighborhood. But just something, I'd be happy to help to make that connection, something we should do before we release the RFP fully.
I think I agree with that, Board Member Lopez Chavez. I think a pedestrian, I thought it was already, you could walk it, but you couldn't drive, but maybe it's changed. Connectivity and pedestrian access is going to
Yeah, and just
hopefully be improved by this, I guess, is.
To speak to that, I think the intent of the RDA is to implement the city's master plan. So in the downtown master plan, there is a mid-block walkway map that shows a connection there. So it is our intent to implement that.
All right, thank you. Seeing no more questions, let's move on to item C4, which is a resolution related to the Marmalade Plaza property disposition from the Redevelopment Agency to the Salt Lake City Corporation.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Kate and Ashley are back.
We are back. So with this one, we're more than just information. We'll need a motion from you, just so you're aware. In accordance with the real property disposition policy, property discounts greater than 10% of appraised fair market value are subject to approval of a majority of the RDA board. So just so you're aware of that, this is a conveyance to the city. However, the property disposition policy is silent on that at this time, so we are treating it according to how we would treat any disposition. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So the Marmalade Plaza is located at approximately 524 North, 300 West, right next to the Marmalade Library, and I know that several of you have been there and spoke at the opening. It's most easily seen by the apricot statue that was constructed by Day Christensen. It is a Tier 2 property due to its size, and is part of what we refer to as the Marmalade Block. This is an assemblage of parcels that the RDA started acquiring in 2010 to put out for development opportunities. Let's go ahead and look at the next slide. So just a little bit of background on this and why we're here. So that map showed you the 0.56 acres, and this shows you what is there now in that lovely visual or photo there. So since 2012, the board has taken several actions with respect to this property. As I mentioned, the RDA has been assembled property in this area to help fulfill the goals of the West Capitol Hill project area. And some of those were to create a walkable area that would enhance economic opportunities for the neighborhood. So in 2012, the RDA board approved a conceptual plan, and the next year they approved 90% design drawings for phase 1 of the plaza's design, which was constructed a little separately than the overall plaza that we see now. It's the portion that is along 500 North, if you're familiar with that area. Once again, the board came back in 2013 and authorized the spending of funds to help build this and other infrastructure along the Marmalade Block. In scooting forward a little bit more, most recently in 2022, the board approved the use of park impact fees, $1 million of park impact fees, to be used for the construction of what is now known as the Marmalade Plaza. Behind the scenes, the city and the RDA have been in discussion since 2014 regarding the maintenance and ownership of this particular location once it was built out. As part of that, in 2014, the RDA board approved a resolution to allow the RDA and the city to, under an understanding that that the RDA would construct both the plaza, a retaining wall, and some drainage systems that are underneath the plaza area, and that it would be transferred after a time after completion to the city. And that is why we are here today, to talk about that completion step. Let's go to the next slide. So with that, in that agreement that was made, we entered into a purchase and sell agreement with the city to transfer this land to the city at a no cost. So due to that no cost transfer, we are in an exclusive negotiation situation with the city, which does require your approval before closing occurs. It was considered in the 2014 agreement that was established, and Parks is on board with that. A couple remaining steps that we have to do before the land is transferred. There's a few punch list items that remain to be done before construction is finally completely done. The RDA has agreed to pay for the first year's maintenance of the park, which we are working on a payment obligation agreement with Parks and getting that executed. So the RDA will pay for that first year's maintenance. After the first year, we are hoping that the additional above the standard level of service maintenance costs will be covered by the block owners on the block. There is a ownership group in place to help make that happen. We are looking at other options that are a little less heavy to make that happen. So that's a work in progress. We'll be working with Parks and the owners to get that in place moving forward. And so that brings us to where we are here today. So our request is that you consider authorizing the fully discounted land transfer from the RDA to the city so that the public plaza can be owned by the city and maintained by Parks, as was the original plan. And once again, we're here due to that disposition price protocol included in the policy. So with that, I'll turn it over to you for any questions or.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez Chavez. I'm Board Member Lopez Chavez.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Did I understand correctly that there's a future where the plaza, we as a city entity enter a private-public partnership with the HOA? Is that correct, what I understood at the end?
So back in 2014, we have to do a lot of research to find out the history of this, because none of us were here at that time, and it's been going on for so long. But back in 2014, it was anticipated that the best way to generate maintenance revenue for the new plaza would be to set up an owners association with a new development that the RDA kind of catalyzed all around the plaza. And basically collect a common area maintenance fee from that owners association. Whenever we kind of restarted this effort, finalized the design, started constructing the park, we started digging into that again, and it seems a little burdensome and complex of a mechanism to collect maintenance funding for one plaza. And also the RDA would be kind of handing off that burden to public lands. So we've been in communication with them to explore alternative options for the maintenance funding.
Thank you. I am a little concerned, again, just to kind of reiterate, of the city maintaining and not having the proper maintenance for another plaza. I know certainly it's a concern of mine. I'm excited that we're entering this, but just, I guess if there's opportunity to explore some sort of fund or fee for this plaza in general, I would be more acute to that and receptive, but I don't know if another commissioner has any concerns around that. I certainly do.
I think it's going to be a perennial concern of mine on any of this for a while.
Okay. Board members, any other comments? Is there anyone ready to make a motion?
I mean, I think, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the disposition and the transfer to from the RDA to Salt Lake City for Marmalade Plaza.
Second.
Okay, the motion is from Board Member Wharton, seconded by Board Member Lopez Chavez to approve the transfer. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Passes unanimously with Board Member Pui absent at time of voting. That brings us to item, are we still C5? C5 is an informational item, the RDA Commercial Assistance Opportunities Update. Danny Walls and Ashley Ogden are here. Oh, and Kara.
All right, yeah, so thank you. We're here today to provide an overview of the RDA's commercial assistance priorities for local businesses and nonprofits, describe some of the high-level ideas that we have for programming that could help address those priorities. And I wanted to acknowledge we did initiate this conversation a long time ago, but we do have new board members who have joined us since then, and we thought it'd be beneficial to provide a quick refresher. Next slide. So I wanted to start out by touching on some larger citywide coordination efforts that have been happening. Over the past few months, we have been working with economic development and community and neighborhoods departments on all things commercial. We meet bi-weekly, and they both have commercial funding programs of their own. And we have agreed our primary goal is to ensure that the city's business and commercial funding programs are transparent, complementary, equitable, and that they effectively address the challenges that our local businesses and nonprofits and the creative communities are facing. So in the name of transparency, we would like to ultimately have a one-stop shop where borrowers can learn about and access the city's various business and commercial assistance programs all in one place. We want to ensure each department's able to fulfill our respective missions with as little overlap in our program offerings as possible. And where there is overlap, we should ensure that opportunities are being offered in an equitable way. And we also want to make sure that these programs are designed to effectively address the need that is out there. Next slide. And since we last met on this topic, the RDA conducted a survey that asked about the challenges of renting and owning commercial spaces. We had 436 respondents, with 46% identifying as business owners or artists, and 54% identifying as nonprofit administrators or employees. And the full survey report is included in the packet. I did want to highlight one of these open-ended responses we received because I feel that it really encapsulates what the RDA is trying to get at with these programs. And so one respondent said, the city needs more small spaces in unique new buildings and existing buildings with affordable rents and walkable neighborhoods. New construction mixed-use buildings don't provide good retail space. Either they're too big, too expensive, lack character, have low ceilings, or are built as an afterthought to check a box. So whether built new or in adapted buildings, small businesses do better in places that have authenticity and character because that's where customers want to go. We can't solve all our problems with huge mega developments. Let's give the little guys more of a chance to put their stamp on the city and create the interesting nooks and crannies that make people want to live, work, and visit our city. Next slide, please. These are the RDA's overarching objectives that staff have worked together to identify. This would be for all of our commercial assistance activities, which will inform the design of the new programs. I'm sorry, this is the last slide I will read to you. I think they're important. Incentivize the construction of right-sized commercial spaces. We want to activate existing underutilized commercial spaces, promote the preservation, rehab, or adaptive reuse of existing building stock, provide opportunities to establish new services, amenities, or underrepresented business types in a neighborhood, creation of affordable rental or ownership opportunities for local businesses and nonprofits. We want to counter the displacement of existing local businesses from their neighborhoods, implement tenant preferences, for example, women, minority, veteran-owned local businesses, and community-serving nonprofits. Partner with local organizations to amplify neighborhood identity, and enhance the capacity for non-traditional applicants to apply for RDA programs. Next slide. So this just shows the structure of those programs we have in mind. So under that general commercial assistance umbrella, we would have the commercial loan program, which would involve the amendment of our existing RDA loan program to have a stronger focus on the funding of commercial development. We already have a Granary District Adaptive Reuse Loan Program, but we would like to amend this program to expand it to all project areas and make it a little bit more accessible for applicants. Community and Cultural Grants Program is new. That's intended to complement existing opportunities through programs like Love Your Block, CAN's Neighborhood Business Improvement Program, and the CIP. And then last, affordable storefront activation strategies. That involves the RDA starting to intentionally gain commercial spaces. That would allow us to activate those spaces and curate them with smaller local businesses and also provide more flexible lease terms for tenants. So I will quickly touch on these individually, and we'll start with the commercial loan program. Next slide. So I included this just to help provide some context of projects that have been funded in the past by the RDA loan program that we want to slightly amend to be more commercial focused. Bicycle Collective, nonprofit development, Jefferson Walkway in Central 9th is a pretty innovative missing middle type housing development. West End was adaptive reuse of those two barrel roof warehouses right on the 9 line. And then Asher Adams Hotel is the large addition to the Union Pacific Depot that is almost completed. In the next few months, it'll be done. Next slide. So the intent with the revision of the RDA loan program is to more effectively prioritize the funding of those commercial projects that support the RDA's mission, values, and livability benchmarks. So this slide shows not what exists, but what we would like some high-level ideas of for the structure of that program. So it provide financing for commercial development in the project areas. We want to expand eligible applicant types to include the tenant or business owner as well, with the property owner's permission. And that's something that the city's facade grant program does, but right now our program requires that you're the title owner of a property to get our loan from us. Eligible uses would largely remain the same: construction hard costs, site improvements associated with the development project, energy efficiency upgrades that would stay with the building, and then some other things would be considered on a case-by-case basis, including tenant improvements. The interest rate reductions, that's the real incentive with our loan program. So this is where we're trying to really target our priorities. So we have those listed here. A lot of them align with the objectives that I already read, but basically we would offer interest rate reductions for projects that meet things, provide space for those local businesses, for minority women or veteran-owned businesses. We built in childcare facilities or after-school programs. We'd like to incentivize those as well. And then last, we would like to include, to build in a requirement to get those spaces activated in a timely manner. I think, again, the facade grant program right now requires 6 months. You have 6 months to get a tenant in there, because we don't want to see our spaces sitting vacant. Next slide. So the revision of the loan program, again, the main intent is to expand it to other project areas, also make it a little bit more accessible. So projects, we can only fund commercial projects in RDA project areas. Right now, that program provides forgivable loans up to $200,000 with a match requirement for projects that convert vacant, underutilized, or economically challenged buildings into housing, joint live-work units, neighborhood-oriented retail or retail services, or office and commercial space. And that's something that has been successful, and we've met with developers. I think that's a really great incentive to get people to adaptively reuse existing buildings. We would like to amend eligible uses of funds to be less specific. Right now, the program says that our funds can only be used to overcome building code impediments associated with rehabbing an old building. And I think we'd like to open that up. I don't really see a reason to be that specific with it, as long as our funds go to costs that are unique to adaptively reusing a building. And we would also like to simplify. We have our match requirement. It's kind of this escalating ratio that's pretty complicated, and we'd like to make it a more straightforward one-to-one match. Next slide. So the community and cultural grants, that's an idea that we came up with after getting a couple funding requests from community groups who they want to do really cool real estate related projects, but they may not be revenue generating, so they're unable to support debt or pay back a loan. So this would it'd be a grant option that would allow them to carry out their projects that do a lot for the placemaking and the vibrancy of our neighborhoods. So again, the goal with this is to fill the gap in the city's current grant or CIP offerings by supporting visible and physical improvements. And some examples, construction of community gathering spaces, cultural education facilities, nonprofit facilities that provide community services, placemaking projects like streetscaping and art, or planning and design activities that support the eventual implementation of those types of projects. Next slide. So this is the last program that we had outlined. This is more of a strategy and may not require the creation of an actual policy, but the intent is for the RDA to gain control of commercial spaces, and that would allow us to provide affordable ownership or rental opportunities to certain tenant types. So in function, it's pretty straightforward. The RDA could gain control of available spaces through master leasing, leasing available new or struggling spaces in priority commercial nodes, property acquisition, which is something we already do, purchase existing buildings or spaces that may be in need of rehab or activation. We could also potentially use our property disposition activities to kind of do an exchange for ownership of that commercial space, such as reducing, the land sale or the lease rate to get the ownership of some ground floor space in new developments. When it comes to implementation, it's a little more complicated. There are some considerations that we outlined here. I think the RDA in our project area work plans, those are our short-term strategies for each project area. I think we do need to establish priority commercial nodes for the deployment of a strategy like this. If all of a sudden the RDA was advertising that we're willing to master lease any old commercial space, it's better to be intentional with it. And our city master plans and city studies give a lot of guidance on that. We would need to establish an approval and budgeting process. I think it could be similar to what we do with property acquisition opportunities, coming to the board and getting the budget allocation and kind of the okay to pursue those opportunities. We would need to work on a standardized and equitable leasing process. If the RDA owned multiple commercial spaces, we would want to make sure we're offering them in an equitable way. And then last, it's worth mentioning, this would result in new functions for the RDA and increased workload as well. So that's definitely something that we're keeping in mind. Next slide. So yeah, the next steps, we would like to get, any thoughts or feedback you have today. We'll go develop each program in a detailed manner and come back to you all for feedback on draft policies and program guidelines. And one thing that I was interested in hearing today from you all is priority of those development of those programs, because we probably will be bringing them back piecemeal. We don't want to come back and barrage you with 4 programs and policies all at one time. So yeah, I think that's all I had.
Appreciate that. Ashley, board members, Board Member Young.
Thank you for bringing this forward. Just a couple general notes, and then I'll try and at least throw out my preference related to the last item. So I really appreciate the lens of less administrative burden, especially on the applicant. And I think that anything we can do to help make these more accessible, to me, is really important in terms of making sure that city resources aren't burdened by bureaucracy. So thank you for that lens. I love it. Would love to see more. The second thing is that I also really appreciate the new community and culture grant opportunity, especially noting that that's a need that you've seen through outreach in the community, and then creating a mechanism and resources in response to that. If given the opportunity, I would place that higher on the development list, just because it is new and it does seem to be responding to existing need within the greater community. Last but not least, I just wanted to highlight and maybe ask a question on the RDA commercial loan program, the interest rate reductions. So all of those really resonate with me in terms of different aspects of kind of community development and needs that we may have in the city. I'm just curious if those interest rate reductions are available more broadly, or if there's other programs that we could expand and apply those to.
Sorry, what do you mean more broadly?
So I appreciate that they're going to be applied to the RDA commercial loan program. Yes. I'm just curious if we have other opportunities for interest rate reduction where those criteria are already existingly used or could be used in the future.
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of those come from the RDA's livability benchmarks, which are part of our mission and values and our guiding framework. And we are actually tweaking those a little bit right now as well. And we're using those benchmarks as a menu of public benefits, essentially, that we could pull from as we build out these new programs. So Housing Development Loan Program is a great example. The gap financing for affordable housing development has a very similar structure where there's these interest rate reductions that are more tailored to affordable housing. But these all are addressed and live in our benchmarks.
Awesome. For what it's worth, thank you for bringing those forward and translating them from kind of our ideals to something that is actually then informed and implemented in a policy in a way that then changes the outcomes of that. I just really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Board Member Petro.
So it just occurs to me that with the advent of the NHL, with the potential anticipation of an MLB team, and now with essentially a decade guillotine over our heads with that Olympics, it's going to become more important than ever that you all can execute this with the greatest efficiency. This to me seems like one of the few tools that could be powerfully executed to make sure that it's not just outside interests coming and investing and reaping the profit off of our energy, but really making sure that our Salt Lake City residents, Utahns, people who have been here contributing to the landscape can be enriched and share that with other people. So as you're going through this, if there are places where we need to stretch ourselves in order to do things in a way that we haven't, that offer efficiency in the best interest of our public, and I don't know how all the time to limit it to our public and not make it available to everyone who comes in off the street, or off the face of the map, I guess. I want them off the street. I don't want them off the highway, maybe is what I'm trying. So that's an area where I'm willing to push myself on and to really work with you all to make sure the pace with which we're going to be moving next decade is going to be accelerated. And in order for our homegrown talent to compete and stay relevant in that landscape, we're going to probably have to do things in an extraordinary manner. So for me, that's a priority, and I'd be willing to try to find at least 3 of others of these guys to make it a priority with me if that's something we need to do.
Okay, Board Member Lopez Chavez, and then Board Member Dugan.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I echo those sentiments. I'm really interested in the adaptive reuse loan program and expanding its geography. I think that's part of it, is lowering the barrier so that our funds can be accessible. They're highly used and in high need. I've heard back from constituents, and specifically the small businesses that feel the burden of displacement or the cost that's scaling of commercial square footage leasing in our downtown area. We can't control everything that's privately sold and bought and being constructed on, but certainly within the RDA's parameters, I think that this is a major priority for me. And as well, echoing Commissioner Young's comments on the community and cultural grants, to me that's second in priority. I think that's a critical piece. It's part of public space management, as I've looked at it, is also our programming. So I've heard from Downtown Alliance, the blocks, other event management spaces that they want to see more programming, and I think that's going to help activate some of these spaces to have a full end-to-consumer experience in our city, especially with our redevelopment projects. Thank you.
Board Member Dugan.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that briefing, and what kind of echoing Councilmember Young's or Board Member Young's point on the making it more accessible and easier to navigate for the applicant. I think that's wonderful, and I think I love the idea that making the escalating ratio simple, 1-to-1. It's a lot easier than that sliding scale that you had before. And Board Member Chavez on the adaptive reuse. That's probably my priority. And I go just back to the quote that you read to us from the very beginning. I remember reading that in the staff reports like that. That drove home the point that the mega places don't have any personality, and the one that has the most imagination would be these adaptive reuse, and it also kind of reinvigorates the local small businesses in an area that needs it, and then it can have its own vibe in that area, and I think that would be wonderful to see off the bat. So I appreciate that, and that would be my choice and priorities of the 4. But they're all, I don't think you can go wrong, but that would be my first one. Thanks.
I have a question, Ashley. Can you go over the culture and events slide again, the one that had the Obon and the Centro Civico? I may have zoned out, but can you just review what the idea is there?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that went into this. The RDA, we have heard from, different groups. We're obviously involved in Japantown work, and also Centro Civico is a real example as well, who've reached out and want to do, infrastructure projects or real estate related projects, but they don't, they're not revenue generating. They can't support debt on a loan. So this is more, meant to fill that gap between some of the mayor's offices, like Love Your Block. I know the ACE grant is a program, and then CIP. And I'll be honest, I think we could use some help identifying like the sweet spot, but I think that there is a gap. That's what we're hearing.
But it is specific to real estate projects for that. I mean, the photos of the Obon Festival, but we're not duplicating the ACE grant. This would be for
That's
development.
Correct. Yeah, it would be for like the streetscape design as an example of an
Got it.
infrastructure project that could be supported. And then another piece of that worth mentioning, the last line, associated planning or design activities. I think that is a need as well, especially with our business district work that economic development's working on. This could be potentially a funding source that business district groups tap into to kind of catalyze their actual design or planning activities for projects they want to do.
Okay. So I'm really excited about this conversation. I know it's asking you to expand your mission as an agency, and it's kind of, it's big. I appreciate you taking it seriously and looking at it. I'm very supportive of the master leasing idea, and I like what you said, Ashley, about maybe we focus, as the RDA, we're trying to make neighborhood nodes. Maybe we focus on a few neighborhood nodes and try and create a critical mass of leasable spaces within those specific nodes. I like that a lot. And I think it works really well in some of the larger project areas where we as either the agency or the city own a large amount of land, Ballpark, Fleet Block, Central Station, Rio Grande, those two up there. I think any of those, it would have been perfect for Central 9th. Maybe West Montrose could be part of that. But I love that idea. I think over by the Tongan Church properties that we're assembling there, that's an excellent place for us to do something like this. I really think that we could do, I think I'm supportive of that. I think that's great. I would want us to look at how the discount for those, the lease rate works, and how as that business gets established and matures, what is the mechanism for us to then start collecting a non-discounted rent from them? And is there a point at which we say you've graduated and you have to go somewhere else? Or do we say we don't really want to disturb the business, you can be there as long as you want to be, but at some point you're, I think that's a policy discussion that would be interesting, because if we let them stay forever, then there's not spaces to incubate more small businesses. But if we kick them out, that's a disruption to their business. So how do we, there's a lot of things to that. But I'm really interested in that. And I think it's a hugely impactful thing for our community. And it hits everything that we look at, right? It's helping economic development. It's helping the businesses themselves. It's helping the residents. It's also just making great neighborhoods for us to live in, which I think I'm super, super supportive of. And I think the bigger question that we as a city, everyone needs to do is like, what is your role and what is economic development's role? How do those overlap? And is it economic development that vets the business and then they bring the business to you only when there's a real estate need? Or I think making sure that those lines are clearly defined. It seems like as soon as it becomes a real estate support, the support of the business moves from just an operating loan to something involving a lease or construction. It makes sense to move it out of their court and into yours, but that's just my initial thought. And I don't think it makes sense to burden RDA staff with like reviewing a business plan and figuring out if their market is saturated with too many hairdressers or whatever. Like, it seems like I would not want you all to be spending your time doing that and keep you doing what you do best, which is real estate. So those are just my thoughts and ideas. It seems like it matches with where you're going, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Board members, any other additional questions? There's no action needed on this. What is the timeline, and what are the next steps, and how can we help get us there?
Yeah, thank you. That's all really great feedback and really helpful. Now it's just prioritizing the development of these programs. We'd like to come back with draft policies, draft guidelines for you all to review. I think we have a discussion on where we need to start, which one we should start with, because they are all different and different levels of effort that will be required. So yeah, we'll be back. I don't know if we'll make the September board deadlines at this point, but October I would definitely expect something.
Great. Excellent. I really appreciate your work on that. I'm very excited for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is report and announcement from Executive Director. Lindsay, Megan, is there anything from your table? All right, next is report and announcements from RDA staff. Danny, do you have anything today?
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair, we have a few things to update the board on, if that's all right.
Please.
First, we want to let the board know that we have released the notice of funding availability for the construction and mortgage loan program solicitation for ADUs. It's a $2.9 million NOFA. It's on the street right now. We're looking for a partner to come in and help us create that program to find ways to put that money actually into the construction of privately funded ADUs. The application's closed September 27th for that. Next, I want to inform the board that we have launched a survey to collect the public's ideas for the half-acre development at 1410 West Indiana Avenue. What we have done is we have posted a sign on the property. We will be sending postcards out to residents. We will be posting the survey on social media, and then also collecting input at the Popular Grove and Glendale Community Council meetings. The survey closes the first week of September, after which staff will then gather that input, sort through it, and use that to inform how we craft the RFP to put that property out for development. Next, recently the staff attended the Ballpark Community Council to announce the selection of the architectural and design firm Perkins & Will, who will be leading the Ballpark Next urban design framework and process for redevelopment of the Smiths Ballpark site. They have already officially kicked off that process. They're reviewing the information. We have 2 stakeholder meetings coming up. One is at the end of August, where we'll look at design strategies and prioritize those with the community members. And then the second stakeholder meeting will be at sometime in November, where we will really get into looking at what the options are in terms of either reusing the stadium, reusing a portion of the stadium, or what it would look like if we remove the stadium. So really kind of looking at the pros and cons for that. And then for you as a board, we look to provide a draft concept to you in Q1 of 2025 for your input, and also any public comment through the RDA process. We will be tracking progress at slc.gov/ballparknext. So if you want to point people to that website, we're happy to provide that. And then finally, want to thank Tracy Tran and Allison Parks for the closing of the $10 million. I think I just went dead. Sorry, Katie. Right when we're giving props to your office, it just kills the mic. No, we have closed on that $10 million funding for the Perpetual Housing Fund. You recall this is for the acquisition of floors within the 515 East 100 South building. That's a current office building that's going to be converted into affordable housing. But more importantly, that will include the tenant wealth building program under the Perpetual Housing Fund. So with that $10 million, Perpetual Housing Fund of Utah is also committed to providing an additional 1,000 affordable units under that program model. And then as part of the structure of us providing those funds, the RDA will return 2 to 6% annually on our $10 million in that fund. So that was a complicated deal, and Allison and Tracy did a ton of work to get that to the finish line, and we're thrilled and excited to see that project move forward.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Thank you. Can I ask a question on the Ballpark Next timing? Thank you for that update. And I provided that update at my town hall on Friday. There were some questions that came up. Are those stakeholder meetings closed meetings, or are they public meetings? And if there are public members that would like to, are they already invited? Is the team selected? Is there room for additional people to join?
I'm going to ask McKenna or Lauren to come up and answer that, so I make sure we get the right information.
Thanks, Danny. And the answer is okay if it's like we're still figuring that out, but that came up at my
I think I can say the answer, but I don't want to go off script.
No, that is a great question, and I'm hoping to have invites sent out today. It's not going to be an open public meeting. We are trying to narrow the focus of that group to about 35 representatives, including city representatives, community representatives, and different organizations that are located in the area. So we have selected that team, and invites should be going out soon.
Okay, so you already know who's going to be on that.
Yeah, and we consulted with the ballpark community, and we're utilizing the community advisory group that we used for the visioning process, so trying to keep those community members carried through to this one.
Excellent. I appreciate the update. I appreciate that we're having some meetings on that. I'll just share publicly, because I've been getting a lot of questions recently, that with all the other major things happening in the city, there's a fear that the ballpark will be forgotten and things will slow down. So thank you for not letting that happen, and let me know what I can do to make sure that the momentum continues on the ballpark properties, because not making momentum on that would be devastating, and it's a huge opportunity. And I appreciate that there's updates on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I will just add a thank you to you as the board, because I think to your point, what's allowing us to move it forward is the funding provided by the board to hire the consultant. And they will see this process through and continue to push it so it doesn't lose that momentum.
And I think that what I heard was that the best case scenario, early 2025, we have an actual plan that could be, is that a plan that we would, as the board, adopt, and then you would use that to create RFPs?
It is, along with the Rio Grande plan, we'll work through how that comes to the board for approval. But then to your point, the plan will set up how we then start putting the property out for development.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I look forward to more discussions on that. The next item is C8, which is report to chair and vice chair, and I do not think there is one. The chair is absent today. D1 is a written briefing related to property disposition for 167, 169 South Regent Street, so go ahead and read that. And we do not have a consent agenda. Is there a closed session under RDA? Okay, we do not, so I think with that we're adjourned. Madam Council Chair, when would you like us to reconvene?
Can we come back at 2:45? We'll still be an hour, 15 minutes ahead of schedule.
I made up that much time for you?
You are the most efficient chair. I am
welcome.
but a student.
Works for me.
2:45.
2:45 for City Council work session. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
we are
you.
adjourned.